That's Larry Bird. Ever heard of him? Quick question for you. After Kristaps Porzingis got traded from the Washington Wizards to the Boston Celtics, what did he listen to on the plane ride there? A. Shipping Off to Boston by the Dropkick Murphys. B. Boston by Augustana. Or C. The entire discography of the band Boston. If this ever gets to Kristaps, let us know, man, because it's kind of important. And Marcus Smart, of course, listened to Walking in Memphis. Mark Cohen? C-O-H-N? Let's talk about the Boston Celtics. I mean, kind of like serious stuff going on in Beantown these days. And I'm not just talking about the gentrification of the Seaport neighborhood and North End, and really probably all of Boston in a way. No, we're talking about far more serious things than social freaking tectonic plates. That's why we stick to basketball, of course. So Boston, they traded Marcus Smart. Their kind of consensus soul and spirit of the team. How are they going to fare when they lose their anchor, their longest tenured player? It's a good question. It's definitely a concern, of course. 2 first-round picks along with Kristaps Porzingis definitely doesn't hurt, of course. I think, the reaction in Boston when this trade went down was like, all right, it was Brogdon at first to the Clippers, and it was like, all right, yeah, one of the 3 guards, him, Derek White, Brogdon, Smart, probably one needed to go, and, that's fair price. That trade, collapsed somehow, and was like, oh, well, shit, never mind. But then it was like, no, it's back on. You're like, oh, great, okay. But it's Marcus Smart this time. And it was like, what? And then it was like, with 2 first-round picks. And it was still like, okay, damn. That's tough. I think it's really cutthroat, and the Celtics front office, between this and Isaiah Thomas, is probably the most cold-blooded trades maybe ever. Probably not ever, but in recent memory, it's 2 of the top 5, probably. So yes, from a personality standpoint, from a locker room dynamic standpoint, losing Marcus Smart obviously leaves a big void. And then you consider kind of the court repercussions as well. You lose, a tough defender. What the kind of the closest thing they had to like a point guard facilitator man, and like heart and soul of the team. So really now this is going to be Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. And of course, everyone's like, all right, they need to step up or whatever. And you could argue maybe they don't have kind of the personalities to lead our locker room, but you could also argue with Marcus Smart there was never really a demand for more personalities to lead the locker room. Of course, Al Horford, seasoned vet, kind of voice of reason type personality. He'll still be around. And generally, these aren't like a lot of egos. It's just there's not necessarily that person that's going to like rally the troops. Grant Williams kind of showed flashes, I guess, but didn't have the credibility to back it up on the court. He's also gone. If I could think of a song about Dallas, I would say that in terms of what he listened to on the way there. But, there's a lot of Texas songs for sure that I'm sure he could find on a quick Google search. But, this is Tatum Brown's team now. And of course, the biggest story, at least recently for these Boston Celtics, is the Jaylen Brown 5-year, $304 million extension, which everyone gets to pretend means that the Celtics think Jaylen Brown's the best player to ever play basketball, instead of recognizing this is more about timing and the CBA and the salary cap and just how these things work. People forget Mike Conley had the biggest contract extension ever at one point. It's not a reflection of the player. It's more the context. So we don't have to let the numbers are the numbers. The idea is, Jaylen Brown, a supermax guy, and he is. He's an all-NBA player. Yes, he struggles dribbling from time to time, which I agree is sort of puzzling for a professional basketball player, especially at the guard wing position. But at the end of the day, if you watch the Celtics, Jason Tatum's not the most consistent player, and he goes through, peaks and valleys. And when Jason Tatum is having a valley game, it's usually Jaylen Brown who steps up. And there's not a lot of duos that kind of somehow, some way figure out how, like, when one of them's off, the other needs to be on. It just sort of works. And to have a number 2 in Jaylen Brown, especially in the East when, the list of contenders is pretty short if it's not just Celtics Bucks. I don't know if you really can argue for anyone else at this point, unless there's a major move. I don't know what the Celtics alternative is. Obviously, everyone gets to laugh at some executive that said Jaylen Brown's like the 5th best player on the Celtics. This is like a perception thing where, he had a tough, game 7, a lot of turnovers against the Heat. The Warriors last finals figured out, if you attack him as he's driving, his ball security is not very good. But at the end of the day, this is a guy that's scoring like 27 points a game and hits big shots, has been in like more playoff games than most guys his age. Most players his age, much less guys. If you include just guys, I mean, he's top like 99.9th percentile. So I think this is a lot about nothing. And even if you're not the biggest Jaylen Brown fan, like long term, they can still trade him. And all the numbers are going to become relative. Like everyone's going to catch up to Jaylen Brown. Where, yeah, it's weird for us because it's like the first contract pretty much where the last number on it is like a 70. But there's going to be a lot of contracts with 70s at the end of them as we continue. And newsflash, there are going to be more ones that are more than that. That's just how it works. So I don't think the Jaylen Brown thing really is a big deal in the context of what the Celtics want to do. They want to compete. He's going to help them compete. Letting him go makes no sense and just losing the assets. So I don't really know what you want to do. I think a lot of it's just a bunch of noise. It's a bunch of NBA offseason kind of BS. So let's get that off our plate and actually talk like what this team's going to look like. So you now slide Derek White to the point guard. I think that makes a lot of sense. You feel better with him offensively, a better shooter than Marcus Smart. Probably could, with the potential to be a better facilitator. He's not someone that, struggles with shot selection as much as Marcus Smart. Smart kind of came in thinking he was a better shooter probably than he did. He's someone that when he lets it fly, you're kind of like, but it goes in a decent amount. So, you let him take them, but you're not always happy about it. Derek White, you're probably a little more happy about it. He's probably going to defer more to Tatum and Brown. So that makes sense. Brogdon off the bench, of course. Now there's maybe a little more wiggle room for Peyton Pritchard. Of course, it is sort of awkward with him now because he kind of demanded a trade. And like Brogdon also got traded for 6 hours. So you got to take a second maybe for everyone to be like, right. But overall, makes sense. They bring in O'Shea Brissett as like some kind of wing depth. Whether, I would have liked to have seen something else, and obviously there's still some moves to be made potentially, but they need some more depth behind Tatum and Brown on the wings still, and maybe a little more bulk, because that Grant Williams role in the playoffs is really important, and I'm not sure who that is now unless it's Tatum, which is asking a lot already, because Tatum does a lot already, and obviously they're fully handing the keys to everything to him and Brown now. With Smart gone, it's a lot on his plate. Of course, Kristaps now gives you rim protection. He can spread the floor. A lot more versatility in what you can do offensively. You can pair him with, Rob Williams. You can pair him with Al Horford. You can go 5 out. And you really don't lose any size, which, of course, Kristaps, the health thing is the health thing. But in a perfect world, this team makes a lot of sense. It's just a matter of can they put it all together and can they kind of become a cohesive group? Because they extended Kristaps. So, this is the team now this is the mix-up that a lot of people would argue was probably necessary. It was kind of, they got in a funk in the playoffs. They really stocked up, on the coaching staff, which I think very underrated move. Joe Maz kind of was just thrown into this situation last season at the beginning of the year and was just expected to carry this like contending team. Now he's got some more veterans, on his staff, and Sam Cassell, Charles Lee. Like, that makes a ton of sense. Bring some more veteran kind of voices in that locker room, and that will also make up for some of the Marcus Smart loss there. So I think that, Brad Stevens, really smart move. Get to say smart a lot because Marcus Smart's last name is also an adjective. Sorry. That describes the Celtics GM, Brad Stevens. And then you also, bring in Jordan Walsh, which is an interesting piece. In Summer League, showed flashes. I mean, a lot of people didn't think he was going to be able to shoot at the NBA level, and he had a couple good shooting games where it's not like totally not going to be able to let it fly, huge liability. Like, if he can knock down an open shot, the way he defends and the energy he brings, like, he'll find some minutes in the Celtics rotation, especially because they are pretty thin at wing. So I'm really excited, honestly, to see what the Celtics team looks like. It will be interesting to see Joe Maz year 2. They seem to have a lot of faith in him, which is good, because if you're kind of iffy about it, it's like you should probably cut your losses now, even though it would be a third coach in 3 years. But I think more confidence in this Joe Maz era. Kristaps, we'll see how he gels. He's kind of a weird locker room guy to fit with this team, but we'll see. But really fully excited for what comes out of Boston this year. And feel free to let me know what you think about the Boston Celtics. Would love to know how you think Smart's absence affects them. Kristaps coming in, Jordan Walsh. A lot of moving pieces here. You know how I think, or at least what I thought, or my thoughts. It's really probably what I should say. But, at the end of the day, take it easy. Take care of yourselves. And I'll see you next time.